The dust had barely settled from the wagon when Lucian Bennett saw her stumbling up his ranch road with nothing but a carpetbag and desperation written across her face. And in that single moment, he knew his prayers had been answered, even if he did not yet understand how. It was late September 1877, and the Kansas prairie stretched endlessly in every direction from the Bennett Ranch just outside Salina. The land rolled in gentle waves of golden grass, interrupted only by the occasional copse of cottonwood trees and the winding path of the Smoky Hill River in the distance. Lucian stood on his porch, one hand shading his eyes against the afternoon sun, watching the figure approach. Behind him, inside the house, he could hear the chaos that had become his daily existence. 4-year-old twins screaming over a toy, 7-year-old Matthew crying about something, 9-year-old Sarah trying unsuccessfully to calm everyone down, and baby Emma, just 18 months old, wailing from her crib. The woman was young, maybe 23 or 24, with dark auburn hair that had come loose from its pins and hung in tangled waves around her shoulders. Her gray dress was covered in trail dust, and she walked with the careful determination of someone who had come too far to turn back now. When she reached the fence line, she stopped, swaying slightly, and Lucian realized she was not just tired, but close to collapse. He jumped down from the porch and strode across the yard, his long legs covering the distance quickly. "Madam, are you all right?" She looked up at him with eyes the color of honey, and he saw pride warring with need in her expression. "I am looking for work," she said, her voice hoarse. "Any kind of work. I can cook, clean, mend, tend animals. I am a hard worker, and I do not complain." Before Lucian could respond, a particularly loud crash came from inside the house, followed by Sarah's voice yelling, "Matthew, no!" and then more crying. The woman's eyes widened. "You have children?" "5 of them," Lucian said, running a hand through his dark hair, which he knew was standing up at all angles because he had not had time to comb it properly in 3 days. "My wife died 8 months ago. Influenza. I have been trying to manage on my own, but I am losing my mind, madam. I cannot keep up with the ranch work and the children and the house. If you are truly looking for work, then you are hired right now, this very moment. I do not even need to think about it." She blinked at him, clearly not expecting such an immediate answer. "You do not want to know anything about me? References, where I come from?" Another crash from inside, and Emma's wails reached a new pitch. Lucian winced. "Madam, I am not in a position to be particular. You look like a decent woman, and you are standing upright, which means you are better off than I am at the moment. The job is yours if you want it. Room, board, and $30 a month." "$30?" She looked shocked. "That is very generous." "Believe me, you will earn every penny." He opened the gate. "Come on inside before you fall down. When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning," she admitted quietly. Lucian muttered something under his breath and gestured for her to follow him. "I am Lucian Bennett. Most people call me Luke." "Olivia Zimmerman," she said. "Most people call me Liv." They walked up to the house together, and Lucian pushed open the door to reveal the disaster within. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space all in one, and it looked like a tornado had torn through it. Dishes were piled in the wash basin and scattered across the table. Clothes hung from every available surface. Toys littered the floor. The twins, identical boys named Jacob and Joshua, were in the middle of a physical altercation over a wooden horse. Matthew sat at the table with his head down, crying because he had spilled ink all over his slate. Sarah, bless her heart, was trying to retrieve baby Emma from her crib while also keeping an eye on the twins. The little girl looked up when the door opened, and the relief on her face was heartbreaking. "Papa, I tried," she said, and her voice quavered. "I tried to keep them quiet, but Jacob hit Joshua, and Matthew ruined his schoolwork, and Emma will not stop crying." "You did fine, sweetheart," Lucian said gently. He turned to Olivia. "This is Sarah, my oldest. Sarah, this is Miss Zimmerman. She is going to be helping us from now on." Olivia did not waste time on pleasantries. She set her carpetbag down, rolled up her sleeves, and walked straight to the twins. "Boys," she said, her voice firm but not unkind, "fighting solves nothing. Separate corners now." Jacob and Joshua looked up at her with identical expressions of surprise. They were used to their father yelling or giving up, not this calm, authoritative stranger. "Now," Olivia repeated, and something in her tone made both boys scramble to opposite corners of the room. She moved to Matthew next, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Accidents happen. We will clean the slate and start fresh. It is not the end of the world. Then she went to Sarah and carefully took Emma from the exhausted girl's arms. You look like you could use a rest. Why do not you sit down for a moment? Sarah sank into a chair gratefully, and Olivia bounced Emma gently, making soft, soothing sounds. The baby's cries quieted to hiccups, then stopped altogether. She stuck her thumb in her mouth and regarded Olivia with wide, curious eyes. Lucian stood in the doorway, watching this transformation with something like awe. 5 minutes. It had taken this woman 5 minutes to restore order to his chaos. Olivia looked around the room, still rocking Emma. First things first. Mr. Bennett, when did anyone in this house last have a proper meal? Lucian thought about it. I made biscuits and gravy this morning, but they were burned. Yesterday I made beans, but I forgot to soak them long enough, so they were hard. The day before that, we had eggs and bread. And vegetables, fruit. He had the grace to look ashamed. We have been running low on supplies. Olivia nodded slowly. All right, I am going to need you to take me to the root cellar and show me what you have. But first, I need to sit down before I fall down. Could I trouble you for some water? Of course. Lord, I am sorry. You must think I'm a complete fool. Lucian hurried to pour her a cup of water from the pitcher, then pulled out a chair. Please, sit. Olivia sank into the chair, still holding Emma, and drank the water gratefully. Up close, Lucian could see the fine lines of exhaustion around her eyes and mouth. This woman had been through something difficult, he realized. There was a story behind her arrival at his ranch, and it was not a happy one. Sarah, Olivia said softly, what is your job usually? What does your papa have you do? The little girl twisted her hands together. I watch the little ones while papa does the ranch work. I try to cook, but I'm not very good at it yet. I can make cornbread and eggs, but that is about all. That is more than most 9-year-old girls can do, Olivia said warmly. You have been very brave helping your papa like this. But you are still a child, and you should have time to be a child. That is going to change now. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You are really staying? If your papa will have me, yes. Oh, please stay, Sarah whispered. Please. The desperation in the child's voice twisted Lucian's heart. He had been so overwhelmed with his own grief and the impossible task of running the ranch alone that he had not fully realized how much burden he had placed on his daughter's small shoulders. Guilt washed over him, sharp and bitter. Olivia seemed to sense his distress because she caught his eye and gave him a slight shake of her head, as if to say, do not punish yourself now. There is too much work to be done. Boys, she called to the twins, you can come out of the corners now. I want you to pick up every toy on this floor and put them in that basket by the fireplace. Can you do that? Jacob and Joshua nodded and set to work, apparently relieved to have a concrete task. Matthew had stopped crying and was watching Olivia with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Matthew, is that your name? Olivia asked, and he nodded. I want you to go outside and wash your face and hands at the pump. Take your time. The fresh air will do you good. The boy left, clearly grateful for the excuse to escape the crowded house. Emma had fallen asleep against Olivia's shoulder, her little face peaceful at last. Let me show you where she sleeps, Lucian said quietly. He led Olivia to the small bedroom off the main room. It had been his room once, the room he had shared with his wife Catherine. Now it was just a place where he collapsed at night, too exhausted to dream. Emma's crib stood in the corner. Olivia laid the baby down gently, covering her with a light blanket. She is beautiful, Olivia whispered. They all are. They look like their mother, Lucian said. It was true. Catherine had been lovely, with light brown hair and warm brown eyes. All the children had inherited her coloring, except for the twins who had Lucian's darker features. How long were you married? 11 years. We were childhood sweethearts, married when I was 19 and she was 18. Lucian's voice was rough. I thought we would grow old together. Olivia touched his arm briefly, a gesture of sympathy. I am sorry for your loss. And I am sorry for being presumptuous earlier, hiring you on site without knowing anything about your circumstances. You do not have to tell me your story if you do not want to, but I want you to know that you are safe here. Whatever you are running from, you will have protection under my roof. She looked up at him, those honey-colored eyes searching his face. "I was married too," she said finally. "My husband was not a good man. He drank, and when he drank, he got mean. For 2 years I endured it. Then 3 months ago, he took a bad fall from his horse while he was drunk, broke his neck. I was not sorry to see him go, and I am not sorry to say it." Lucian nodded slowly. He had suspected something like that. "Where did you live?" "A small town in Missouri. After he died, I found out he had debts I did not know about. His creditors took everything, including the house. I had nothing left, no family to turn to. My parents died when I was young, and I was an only child. So I started traveling west, looking for work. I have been on the road for 2 months now. Selena was supposed to be just another stop, but then I heard someone in town mention that you were desperate for help out here. I took a chance." "I am glad you did," Lucian said sincerely. "You might just save my life, or at least my sanity." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Let us start by saving supper. Show me that root cellar." For the next hour, Lucian watched in amazement as Olivia transformed his kitchen. She sent him to the root cellar for potatoes, carrots, onions, and a jar of preserved beef. She found flour and lard and set about making biscuits that actually looked like biscuits instead of the charred lumps he had been producing. She put together a stew that began to fill the house with the most wonderful smell Lucian could remember in months. She cleaned as she cooked, organizing the chaos with efficient movements. The children gravitated toward her like moths to a flame. Sarah helped where she could, and Lucian could see the little girl starting to relax, the tension leaving her shoulders. The twins played quietly in the corner, occasionally looking over at Olivia as if to make sure she was still there. Matthew came back inside and sat at the table, watching everything with solemn eyes. "Mr. Bennett," Olivia said as she stirred the stew, "tell me about the ranch. What kind of operation are you running?" "Cattle, mostly. I have about 200 head right now, though I should have more. I have not been able to keep up with everything. I have been neglecting the far pastures, and I know some of the fences are down. I had 2 hired hands, but I had to let them go 2 months ago because I could not afford to pay them anymore, not and feed 5 children too." "How much land do you have?" 400 acres. It is not the biggest spread in Kansas, but it is good land. Or it would be if I could take proper care of it." He heard the frustration in his own voice. "I am one man trying to do the work of 3, and I am failing." "You are not failing," Olivia said firmly. "You are overwhelmed. There is a difference. You have kept your children alive and together. You have not given up. That is not failure." Her words settled something in Lucian's chest that had been tight for months. "Thank you for saying that." "I am saying it because it is true." She tasted the stew and nodded in satisfaction. "This will be ready in about an hour. In the meantime, I think we should establish some order around here. Sarah, sweetheart, where do you children sleep?" Sarah pointed to the ladder that led to the loft. "Matthew and I sleep up there. The twins have a little room off the kitchen, through that door, and Emma sleeps in Papa's room." "And where does your Papa sleep?" "On the floor by the fireplace, usually," Sarah said, and Olivia's eyes snapped to Lucian's face. "You have been sleeping on the floor?" He shrugged. "The children need the beds more than I do." "That is ridiculous. You are working yourself into an early grave, and sleeping on a hard floor is not helping." She wiped her hands on her apron. "Show me this house properly. I need to understand the layout if I am going to organize it." Lucian gave her the tour. The house was not large, but it was well built. He had constructed it himself when he and Catherine had first claimed this land, back in 1866, right after the war. The main room dominated the ground floor. The small bedroom where Emma now slept branched off from it. A tiny room that was really just a closet served as the twins' bedroom. And upstairs in the loft, there were 2 sleeping areas divided by a curtain, where Sarah and Matthew had their spaces. "There is a barn out back," Lucian said as they came back downstairs. "It is where I do most of my work when I am not out on the range. There is a chicken coop, a smokehouse, and a spring house down by the creek." Olivia stood in the middle of the main room, hands on her hips, thinking. "All right, here's what we are going to do. The twins are old enough to move up to the loft. We will put them on one side and Matthew on the other. Sarah can have the small room that the twins are using now. You will take back your bedroom, and I will sleep on a cot in Sarah's new room. That way, I will be close to the children if they need anything at night, but everyone will have proper sleeping arrangements. I cannot ask you to sleep on a cot." "You are not asking. I am telling you how this is going to work. You need proper rest if you are going to run this ranch. That is non-negotiable." Her tone left no room for argument. Lucian found himself smiling. "You are very bossy for someone I hired less than 2 hours ago. Would you prefer I be meek and useless?" "No, madam, I definitely would not." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something warm and unexpected. Lucian looked away first, suddenly flustered. He was not ready for this, whatever this was. Catherine had been gone less than a year. It was too soon to feel anything for anyone else. But Olivia Zimmerman was making it very difficult not to feel grateful, at the very least. Supper that night was a revelation. The children ate like they were starving, which they probably had been, in their way. The stew was rich and flavorful, the biscuits were golden and flaky, and there were even dried apples stewed with cinnamon for dessert. Lucian could not remember the last time he had tasted cinnamon. "This is the best thing I ever ate," Jacob said around a mouthful of biscuit, and Joshua nodded enthusiastically in agreement. "Mind your manners," Lucian said, but his heart was not in the reprimand. He was too busy enjoying his own meal and watching his children's faces light up with simple happiness. After supper, Olivia oversaw bedtime routines with the same calm efficiency she had brought to everything else. She heated water and made sure all the children washed properly. She brushed Sarah's hair and braided it for sleep. She found clean nightshirts for everyone and somehow convinced the twins to put them on without a fight. She rocked Emma and sang a soft lullaby that Lucian did not recognize, something about a mockingbird and a diamond ring. By 8 o'clock, all 5 children were in bed and the house was quiet. Actually quiet, not the fraught, exhausted quiet that Lucian had become accustomed to, but a peaceful, settled quiet. He sat at the table, unable to quite believe what had happened. Olivia came back downstairs from tucking in the older children and poured herself a cup of coffee. "May I sit?" "Of course. This is your home now, too." She sat across from him, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. In the lamplight, he could see how tired she was, but there was also satisfaction in her expression. "They are good children," she said. "You have raised them well." "Catherine raised them well," Lucian corrected. "I have just been trying not to lose them." "You are too hard on yourself. Maybe." He studied her face, the delicate bone structure, the way the lamplight caught the red in her dark hair. "Why did you really come here, Miss Zimmerman? I mean, why this particular ranch, this particular family? You could have found work in town." She was quiet for a moment, staring into her coffee. "I heard a woman in the general store talking about you. She was telling her friend that it was a shame. The way Lucian Bennett was trying to raise 5 children alone, the way he looked so tired all the time. She said someone ought to help him, but nobody wanted to take on that much responsibility. And I thought, here is a man who needs help, and here I am, needing to be needed. It seemed like fate." "Do you believe in fate?" "I did not used to, but standing here now, in this kitchen, with those children asleep upstairs, I think maybe I am starting to." She met his eyes. "What about you?" "I believe God works in mysterious ways, and I believe you showing up at my gate today was an answer to a prayer I have been saying every night for months." Lucian reached across the table and gently touched her hand. "Thank you, Miss Zimmerman. Truly, thank you." She turned her hand over and squeezed his fingers briefly before pulling away. "Call me Leave, please, and you are welcome, Luke." They sat together in the quiet kitchen, drinking their coffee, and for the first time in 8 months, Lucian Bennett felt something that might have been hope. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity and adjustment. Liv settled into the household with remarkable speed, and the change she brought was nothing short of miraculous. The children began to thrive under her care. Sarah started to act like a 9-year-old again, instead of a miniature adult. She played with her dolls and helped Liv with cooking lessons, but was not responsible for keeping her siblings alive. The twins became less wild and more manageable, though they were still energetic boys who required constant supervision. Matthew came out of his shell, showing a quick mind and a gentle nature that Lucian had not seen in months. And Emma, sweet baby Emma, bloomed like a flower under Liv's attention. For his part, Lucian was able to focus on the ranch again. He repaired the fences in the far pastures and moved his cattle to better grazing land. He fixed the roof on the barn where it had been leaking and organized his tack room. He even managed to start work on expanding the chicken coop, something he had been meaning to do for over a year. But more than the physical improvements, there was a shift in the atmosphere of the Bennett ranch. There was laughter again. There was music, because Liv had a lovely voice and sang while she worked. There were proper meals 3 times a day, clean clothes, and a house that did not look like a disaster area. And there was Liv herself, her presence becoming as essential as breathing. Lucian tried not to think about it too much. He tried not to notice the way his heart lifted every morning when he came in from the barn and smelled breakfast cooking. He tried not to pay attention to the way he looked forward to their evening conversations after the children were in bed. He tried not to see how beautiful she was when she smiled. He was not very successful. One evening in late October, about 6 weeks after Liv's arrival, Lucian came back to the house after checking on a cow that was about to calve. It was nearly 9 o'clock, and he expected everyone to be asleep. Instead, he found Liv sitting on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, staring out at the prairie under the light of a nearly full moon. "Could not sleep?" he asked, settling down beside her on the steps. "Too much to think about," she admitted. "It has been quite a change being here." "Good change or bad change?" "Good, very good." She turned to look at him, and in the moonlight, her eyes were luminous. "I feel like I have found something here that I did not even know I was looking for." Lucian's breath caught. "What is that?" "Purpose, belonging, a place where I am needed and wanted." She paused. "A home." "You do belong here," Lucian said quietly. "The children adore you. I do not know how we ever managed without you. You would have figured it out. You are stronger than you think." "Maybe, but I am grateful I do not have to do it alone anymore." He hesitated, then added, "And it is not just about the children, Liv. I need you to know that." She went very still. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I look forward to seeing you every day. I mean that I find myself making excuses to come back to the house just to hear your voice. I mean that when I think about the future now, I cannot imagine it without you in it." The words tumbled out before he could stop them, and once he started, he could not seem to stop. "I know it has not been very long, and I know I am probably rushing things, and Lord knows I have enough complications in my life without adding more, but I cannot help how I feel. You have brought light back into this house, Liv. You have brought light back into my life." Liv was silent for a long moment, and Lucian began to panic. He had overstepped. He had frightened her. She was going to leave, and he was going to lose the best thing that had happened to him in a year. Then she reached out and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I feel it too," she whispered. "I have been trying not to, because it seemed too soon, too fast. But every day I find myself caring more. About the children, yes, but also about you. The way you are so patient with them even when you are exhausted. The way you work so hard to provide for your family. The way you look at me sometimes, like I am something precious." "You are precious," Lucian said roughly. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "You are the most precious thing that has come into my life since my children were born." "Luke," she breathed, and then somehow she was in his arms and he was kissing her. It was a gentle kiss, tentative, both of them aware that they were stepping into new territory. But it was also full of promise, full of all the feelings they had been holding back. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I am not ready to be just a hired girl anymore," Liv said softly. "If this is going to continue, if we are going to explore what is between us, then I need you to see me as more than that." "I do see you as more, so much more." Lucian cupped her face in his hands. "But I also do not want to rush you. You have been through a terrible marriage. I do not want you to feel pressured into anything." "You are not pressuring me. This is my choice." She smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. "I am choosing you, Luke. I am choosing this family. I am choosing to see where this goes." He kissed her again, longer this time, deeper, and when they finally broke apart, the moon had moved halfway across the sky. "We should probably tell the children," Lucian said. "I do not want them to be confused or upset." "Sarah already knows," Liv said with a little laugh. "She told me last week that she thought it would be nice if I became her new mama. I did not know what to say, so I told her that was something for the grown-ups to decide." "What did she say to that?" "She said the grown-ups should hurry up and decide because she was tired of waiting." Lucian laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. "That sounds like Sarah. She's too smart for her own good." They sat together on the porch for a while longer, holding hands, talking quietly about the future. They agreed to take things slowly, to give the children time to adjust, to make sure this was real and lasting. But there was an understanding between them now, a promise of something more. When they finally went inside, Lucian lay down in his bed for the first time in months, feeling something he had thought he would never feel again: happiness. The winter of 1877 came to Kansas with unusual ferocity. By mid-November, snow was falling regularly, and the temperatures dropped well below freezing. Lucian worked from dawn to dusk, making sure his cattle had access to water and what forage they could find. He brought the pregnant cows closer to the barn where he could keep an eye on them. He chopped wood until his arms ached, building up a supply that would see them through the worst of the winter. Through it all, Liv was there, keeping the home fires burning, literally and figuratively. She made sure he had hot food waiting when he came in from the cold. She patched his heavy coat and knitted him new gloves. She kept the children occupied and happy even when they were trapped inside by blizzards. And in the evenings, when the children were asleep, she would sit with him by the fire and they would talk. They shared their histories, their dreams, their fears. Lucian told her about growing up in Illinois, about coming west after the war, about meeting Catherine at a church social and knowing immediately that she was the one. Liv told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her parents dying in a cholera outbreak when she was 16, about marrying Owen Zimmerman because she was alone and scared and he had seemed kind at first. "When did it change?" Lucian asked one night, holding her close as the wind howled outside. "The first time he hit me was 3 months after we married. He came home drunk and angry about something at work. I do not even remember what I said, but it set him off. He backhanded me across the face." Her voice was matter of fact, but Lucian could feel the tension in her body. "I told myself it was a one-time thing, but it was not. It happened again and again, and I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to." "I am sorry you went through that," Lucian said, his voice thick with anger at a dead man. "You deserve so much better. I know that now. For a long time, I believed him when he said it was my fault, that I provoked him. But after he died, after I had time to think clearly, I realized that nothing I did could justify what he did to me. The fault was his, not mine. You are incredibly brave, you know that? I do not feel brave. I feel lucky. Lucky that I survived. Lucky that I found my way here." He kissed the top of her head. "I am the lucky one." As winter deepened, so did their relationship. They moved carefully, mindful of the children and the proprieties, but the love growing between them was undeniable. The children accepted it with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Sarah was thrilled, already calling Liv Mama Liv and planning their wedding. Matthew was cautiously happy, content to have stability and peace in his home again. The twins did not much care about the romance, as long as there was food on the table and someone to play with them. And Emma, too young to understand, simply adored Liv with the uncomplicated love of a toddler. In late December, during a brief warm spell that melted some of the snow, Lucian hitched up the wagon and took the family into Salina. It was time, he decided, to make things official. They stopped first at the general store, where Lucian bought supplies and, while Liv was distracted by the children, purchased a simple gold ring from the selection the merchant kept in a locked case. Then they went to the church, a modest white building at the center of town. Reverend Holbrook was a kind man in his 50s who had presided over Catherine's funeral. He welcomed the Bennett family warmly and was pleased to see how much healthier and happier they all looked compared to the last time he had seen them. "Reverend," Lucian said, his arm around Liv's shoulders, "I would like you to meet Miss Olivia Zimmerman. She has been helping me with the children and the ranch, and I would like to marry her, if she will have me, and if you will perform the ceremony." Liv's eyes went wide with surprise. They had talked about marriage, of course, but Lucian had not told her he planned to propose today. "Luke," she whispered, "are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." He pulled out the ring and knelt down right there in the church aisle, with all 5 children watching and the Reverend smiling. "Olivia Zimmerman, you have given me back my life. You have given my children a mother's love when they needed it most. You have made our house a home again. I love you more than I can say, and I would be honored if you would agree to be my wife. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Liv's face, but she was smiling. Yes, of course I will marry you." Sarah let out a whoop of joy that echoed through the church. Matthew grinned. The twins started jumping up and down. Emma clapped her hands, not entirely sure what was happening, but caught up in the excitement. Reverend Holbrook laughed. "I take it you would like to set a date." "As soon as possible," Lucian said, standing and slipping the ring onto Liv's finger. "I do not want to wait any longer than necessary." They settled on a date in early January, after the new year. It would give them time to prepare, to make sure everything was in order. Liv would need a proper dress, and Lucian wanted to make sure the ranch was secure before he took even a day away from work. The ride back to the ranch was full of chatter and excitement. Sarah was already planning how they would decorate the house for the wedding. Matthew wanted to know if there would be cake. The twins argued about who would get to stand closer to Liv during the ceremony. And Liv sat beside Lucian on the wagon seat, her hand clasped in his, the ring on her finger catching the winter sunlight. "Are you happy?" Lucian asked her quietly while the children were distracted. "Happier than I ever thought I would be," Liv said. "I feel like I am living in a dream. If it is a dream, I do not ever want to wake up." They were married on January 7th, 1878, in a simple ceremony at the church in Salina. Liv wore a dress of deep blue wool that brought out the color of her eyes, and Lucian wore his best suit, the one he had been married in the first time and had worn to Catherine's funeral. He had hesitated about wearing it, worried it would feel wrong, but when he mentioned it to Liv, she had taken his hand and said, "Catherine was part of your life, and she will always be part of your history. I am not asking you to forget her. I am just asking you to make room for me too." That was when Lucian knew, beyond any doubt, that he had chosen the right woman. The ceremony was attended by a few neighbors and friends from town. Mrs. Hattie Sinclair, the woman from the general store who had first mentioned Lucian's plight to Liv, cried through the whole thing. John and Martha Keene, who owned the neighboring ranch, stood as witnesses. The children sat in the front pew, all dressed in their Sunday best, watching with solemn faces as their father and their beloved Miss Zimmerman became husband and wife. When Reverend Holbrook pronounced them married and told Lucian he could kiss his bride, Lucian did so with enthusiasm, and the small congregation erupted in applause. Sarah rushed forward to hug them both, and soon all the children were clustered around, and it was not just a marriage but the formation of a new family, one built on love and need and choice. They held a small reception at the ranch, with Martha Keene and Hattie Sinclair helping to put together a meal from the supplies they had all brought. There was roasted chicken and potatoes, fresh bread, pickles and preserves, and a cake that Martha had made special for the occasion. The children ate until they were stuffed, and then Sarah taught the twins how to dance while Matthew watched and Emma toddled around in circles, laughing. As the sun began to set, the guests departed, and the Bennett family was alone. Lucian stood in the doorway, watching his children playing in the golden light, and felt Liv's arms wrap around him from behind. "Hello, husband," she murmured. "Hello, wife," he replied, turning to kiss her. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Bennett?" "It feels like coming home." That night, after all the children were in bed, Lucian and Liv finally had their wedding night. It was tender and careful, both of them aware that this was a new beginning. Liv had been nervous, her experience with physical intimacy tainted by her first marriage, but Lucian was patient and gentle, making sure she knew she was loved and cherished. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, and Liv cried a little, but they were tears of relief and joy. "I did not know it could be like that," she whispered. "I did not know it could be so gentle and good." "It should always be good," Lucian said, stroking her hair. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know how much I love you." "I know," Liv said. "I already know." The winter continued its harsh grip on the Kansas prairie, but inside the Bennett house there was warmth and love and a sense of completeness that had been missing. The children adjusted quickly to calling Liv Mama, though Sarah still sometimes used Mama Liv to distinguish her from the mother she remembered. Lucian found that his grief for Catherine, which had once been a constant weight on his chest, had softened into a bittersweet memory. He would always love Catherine, would always be grateful for the years they had together and the children she had given him, but his heart had room for Liv too. Different loves for different women, both precious in their own ways. As the weeks passed, Liv began to settle into her role as mistress of the ranch in earnest. She took over not just the cooking and cleaning and child-rearing, but also the management of the household finances. She discovered that Lucian, while a good rancher, was terrible with bookkeeping. She organized his chaotic records, figured out exactly where they stood financially, and started planning for the future. "We need to hire help again," she announced one evening in late February as they went over the accounts together. "You cannot keep doing everything yourself. You are going to run yourself into the ground." "We cannot afford help," Lucian protested. "Not if we want to save for the future, maybe add to the herd. We can afford one good man, maybe two if we are careful. And we need them, Luke. Spring is coming, and with it calving season and branding and 100 other tasks. You need help." He knew she was right. "I will ask around in town, see if anyone is looking for work." By mid-March, Lucian had hired 2 men, Tom Garrett, a weathered cowhand in his 40s who had worked on ranches all over Kansas, and his nephew Pete, a lanky 19-year-old who was eager to learn. They built a small bunkhouse near the barn and settled into the rhythm of ranch life. With their help, Lucian was able to get on top of the work that had been piling up for months. The cattle made it through the winter with minimal losses, and when the calves started arriving in April, Liv insisted on coming out to the barn to see them. She delighted in the newborns, exclaiming over their long legs and big eyes. She even convinced Lucian to let Sarah and Matthew come watch a birth, despite his reservations about whether it was appropriate for the children. "They live on a ranch," Liv said firmly. "They should understand where their livelihood comes from." Sarah and Matthew were fascinated rather than frightened, and afterward they both declared that they wanted to be ranchers when they grew up, just like their papa. As spring turned to summer, the Bennett Ranch began to truly thrive. The pastures greened up, and the cattle grew fat. The garden that Liv planted behind the house flourished, providing fresh vegetables for the table and preserves for the winter. The children grew taller and stronger, their faces tanned by the sun. Emma started talking in full sentences and followed Liv everywhere, a tiny shadow who wanted to help with everything. And through it all, Lucian and Liv's love deepened. They learned each other's habits and quirks, the little things that made them laugh and the bigger things that drove them crazy. They had their first real fight in June, when Lucian stayed out too late helping Tom with a difficult calving, and Liv worried herself sick, thinking something had happened to him. They argued, both of them saying things they did not quite mean, and then Lucian pulled her into his arms and apologized for scaring her, and Liv apologized for overreacting, and they made up in the way that newlyweds do. "We are going to fight sometimes," Lucian said later, as they lay in bed listening to the crickets through the open window. "It does not mean we love each other less." "I know," Liv said. "I am just not used to fighting with someone who actually listens to me. Owen never listened. He just got angrier. I will always listen to you, even when I do not like what you are saying." He kissed her forehead. "You are my partner, Liv, my equal. Your voice matters to me." Those words meant more to Liv than any declaration of love. She had never been anyone's equal before. She had been a burden to her parents, an object to her first husband. But with Lucian, she was a partner, a helpmate, someone whose opinions and ideas were valued. It made her love him even more. In August, Liv realized she had missed her monthly courses for the second time. At first, she thought it might be stress or the change in her routine, but when she started feeling nauseated in the mornings, she knew. She was pregnant. She waited until she was sure, until she had gone to see Dr. Morrison in Salina and had her suspicions confirmed. Then, one evening when the children were playing outside and Lucian was washing up for supper, she told him, "Luke, I have news. I am going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby." He stared at her for a long moment, water dripping from his hands, his face unreadable. Then a slow smile spread across his features, and he let out a whoop of joy that startled the children outside. He grabbed Liv and spun her around, laughing. "A baby! We are having a baby!" He set her down carefully, suddenly worried. "Should I be spinning you around? Is that safe? Are you all right? When is the baby coming?" Liv laughed at his sudden nervousness. "I am fine. The baby is due in March, I think. And yes, you can spin me around, at least for now." Sarah came running in, alarmed by her father's shout. "What happened? Is everything okay?" "Everything is wonderful," Lucian said, his arm around Liv. "You are going to have a new brother or sister." Sarah's face lit up. "Really? Oh, I hope it is a sister. I have been outnumbered for too long." She rushed to hug Liv, and then the twins came tumbling in, wanting to know what the excitement was about, and Matthew followed, curious, and Emma toddled in last, not wanting to be left out. Soon the whole family was clustered together, talking over each other about the new baby, and Liv felt a surge of love so strong it almost hurt. This was her family. These children were hers now, not by blood but by choice and love, and soon there would be another child, one who would tie them all together. That night, as they lay in bed, Lucian rested his hand on Liv's still flat stomach. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For everything. For coming into my life when I needed you most. For loving my children like they are your own. For giving me hope again. For this." He patted her stomach gently. "For giving us a future." "You gave me just as much," Liv said. "You gave me a home and a family and a reason to wake up in the morning. You showed me what love is supposed to look like. I should be thanking you. Then we will thank each other and call it even." They fell asleep like that, Lucian's hand resting on the place where their child grew, both of them content in a way they had never imagined possible. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and into winter. Liv continued to manage the household with her usual efficiency, though Lucian and the children all conspired to make sure she did not overwork herself. Sarah became her devoted helper, always ready to fetch things or keep an eye on Emma. Matthew took on more chores without being asked. Even the twins, wild as they were, tried to be more careful around her. As Christmas approached, Lucian asked Liv what she wanted for a gift. She thought about it and then said, "I want a photograph of all of us, so we can remember this time, this moment when we are all together and happy." "Then that is what we will do." They went into Selena in mid-December, all dressed in their finest clothes. Mr. Henderson, the photographer, had a studio above the bank, and he was delighted to have such a large family to photograph. He positioned them carefully, Lucian and Liv in the center, with Sarah and Matthew standing behind them, the twins sitting at their feet, and Liv holding Emma on her lap. It took several attempts because the twins could not sit still, but finally, Mr. Henderson got the shot he wanted. When they picked up the finished photograph a week later, Liv cried at how perfect it was. They all looked so proper and serious, the way people did in photographs. But if you looked closely, you could see the love in their eyes, the way they leaned toward each other, the sense of belonging. "We will get another one made after the baby comes," Lucian promised. "So we have a complete record of our family." Winter that year was milder than the one before, which everyone took as a good omen. Liv grew round and uncomfortable as February turned to March, but she never complained. She moved more slowly, needed more rest, but she still sang while she cooked, still told the children stories at bedtime, still made time for quiet moments with Lucian. On March 20th, just after dawn, Liv woke Lucian with a gentle shake. "It is time," she said quietly. "The baby is coming." Lucian flew out of bed and into action. He sent Tom racing into town to fetch Dr. Morrison and Martha Keene, who had agreed to help with the birth. He moved Sarah and the other children to the bunkhouse with Pete, despite their protests that they wanted to stay. He boiled water and gathered clean cloths and tried not to panic. Liv labored through the morning and into the afternoon. Martha arrived first and took charge, sending Lucian out of the room when he got too anxious. Dr. Morrison came shortly after, his calm presence reassuring everyone. And finally, as the sun began to set, a baby's cry filled the house. Lucian, who had been pacing outside the bedroom door for what felt like hours, burst in to find Liv propped up on pillows, exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle. "You have a son," Martha announced, beaming. Lucian approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the baby. He was small and red-faced, with a shock of dark hair and his mother's honey-colored eyes. "He is perfect," Lucian whispered. "He is ours," Liv said, and the joy in her voice made Lucian's throat tight with emotion. They named him James Owen Bennett, James after Lucian's father, and Owen to honor Liv's past without letting it define her future. The children were allowed to come meet their new brother that evening, and they were all appropriately awed by the tiny person. "He is so small," Sarah said, gently touching James's hand. "Was I ever that small?" "You were even smaller," Lucian assured her. "You were all small once." Jacob and Joshua were less impressed, pronouncing him boring because all he did was sleep and eat. But Matthew was fascinated, asking questions about what babies needed and how to take care of them. And Emma, now nearly 3 years old, declared that James was "my baby" and tried to climb into bed with Liv to get a closer look. The first few weeks with a newborn were exhausting, even with all the help Liv had. James was a good baby, but he still needed to be fed every few hours, day and night. Lucian took on more of the household duties to give Liv time to recover and care for James. Sarah helped with Emma and the twins. Matthew took over some of the garden work. Even Tom and Pete pitched in, doing laundry and cooking when necessary. And slowly, the family found its new rhythm. By the time James was a month old, they had all adjusted to having another person in the house. By the time he was 2 months old, he was smiling and cooing and charming everyone with his sweetness. That summer was one of the best Lucian could remember. The ranch prospered, with more calves surviving than ever before, and good prices at market. The garden produced abundantly, and Liv spent long hours preserving food for the winter. The older children grew more independent, helping with chores without being asked, and James thrived, growing chubby and happy. One evening in July, after all the children were in bed, Lucian and Liv sat on the porch watching the sun set over the prairie. James was asleep in Liv's arms, his little face peaceful. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would have been if you had not come to my ranch that day?" Lucian asked. Liv considered the question. "Sometimes. I think about where I would be now if I had not taken a chance on a desperate rancher and his 5 children. Probably alone somewhere, working some menial job, just surviving instead of living." She looked up at him. "I think about how close I came to missing all of this. I think about that too, how close I came to losing everything. The ranch, my sanity, maybe even my children, if I had become too overwhelmed to care for them properly." He took her free hand and kissed it. "You saved us, Liv. You saved all of us." "We saved each other," Liv corrected gently. "You gave me just as much as I gave you. Maybe more." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crickets and the distant lowing of cattle. Then Lucian said, "I love you, Olivia Bennett. I love you more than I ever thought I could love anyone. I love you too, Lucian Bennett, with everything I am." As the months passed and 1878 turned to 1879, life on the Bennett Ranch continued its steady course. James grew from an infant to a toddler, walking and talking and getting into everything the way toddlers do. Emma became his devoted protector, always making sure he did not wander too far or get into too much trouble. The twins started school, joining Matthew in the small schoolhouse in Salina, which meant quieter days at home, but more hectic mornings trying to get everyone ready on time. Sarah began helping Liv with more complex cooking and sewing, preparing for the day when she would run her own household. In the spring of 1879, Liv discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the announcement was met with equal parts joy and mild panic, as everyone tried to figure out where another person would fit in their already crowded house. "We need to add on," Lucian decided. "Another bedroom at least, maybe 2. The twins are getting older, and they will need their own space soon." Through the summer, during spare moments between ranch work, Lucian and Tom built an addition onto the house. It was not fancy, but it was solid and gave them 2 new bedrooms and a little more breathing room. By the time the new baby arrived in January of 1880, a daughter they named Catherine Grace after Lucian's first wife, the family had space to spread out. Little Catherine, who everyone called Katie from the start, was a calm baby, easygoing and happy. She had her father's dark hair, but her mother's eyes, and she was doted on by everyone in the family. James, at nearly 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and wanted to help with everything, though his help often created more work. As the 1880s began, the Bennett Ranch was well established and prosperous. Lucian had nearly 400 head of cattle now, and had bought an additional 200 acres when his neighbor to the south decided to sell. Tom Garrett had become his foreman, and Pete had become a skilled cowhand. They had 3 other hands working during the busy seasons, and the operation ran smoothly. Sarah, now 13, was growing into a young woman, smart and capable. Matthew, at 11, showed signs of becoming a fine rancher himself, with a good head for business and a gentle way with animals. The twins, at 8, were still wild but channeling their energy into useful pursuits like riding and roping. Emma, at 5, started school and proved to be a quick learner. And through it all, Lucian and Liv's love continued to grow. It was not the passionate, all-consuming love of youth, but something deeper and steadier. It was the love of 2 people who had been through hardship and come out stronger. It was the love of partners who worked side by side to build something lasting. It was the love of best friends who knew each other's darkest moments and brightest joys. They had their challenges, of course. There were years when the cattle prices dropped and money was tight. There were illnesses and accidents and the normal dramas of raising a large family. There were moments of frustration and exhaustion, but they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. One evening in the fall of 1883, after the harvest was in and the cattle were settled for winter, Lucian and Liv found themselves alone on the porch again. It had become their ritual over the years, these quiet moments at the end of the day, when they could talk without interruption. "Do you remember the day we met?" Lucian asked, his arm around Liv's shoulders. "Every detail. I was so desperate and scared, and you were so obviously overwhelmed. We must have been quite a sight. You had dust in your hair and holes in your shoes, and I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen." Liv laughed. "Liar, I looked like a disaster." "You looked like hope," Lucian corrected. "You looked like an answer to prayer." He turned to face her, taking both her hands. 6 years, Liv. 6 years since you walked up that road and changed my life. Sometimes I still cannot believe how lucky I got." "We both got lucky," Liv said. "I found a home and a family and a man who treats me like I matter. That is more than I ever dreamed of having. You matter more than you know, to me, to the children, to everyone on this ranch. You are the center that holds us all together." They kissed, slow and sweet, and when they pulled apart, Liv rested her head on Lucian's shoulder. "I want more nights like this," she said quietly. 1,000 more nights sitting on this porch with you, watching the sun set, knowing our children are safe inside and all is well with the world." "Then that is what you will have," Lucian promised. 1,000 more nights and 1,000 more after that. "I am not going anywhere, Liv. I am yours for as long as you will have me. Forever, then, I will have you forever." As the years continued to roll by, the Bennett children grew up. Sarah married a young rancher named Daniel Foster in 1885, and they settled on a piece of land just an hour's ride from the Bennett ranch. She gave birth to Lucian and Liv's first grandchild in 1886, a boy named William, and Lucian discovered that being a grandfather was just as wonderful as being a father. Matthew took over more of the ranch operations as Lucian began to slow down in his late 40s. The boy, now a man, proved to have a gift for the work, and Lucian knew the ranch would be in good hands when the time came to pass it on. The twins both became cowboys, hiring themselves out to various ranches around Kansas, and occasionally coming home with wild stories of their adventures. They were trouble, those two, but good-hearted trouble, and Lucian could not help but be proud of them. Emma became a teacher at the school in Salina, surprising everyone with her patience and skill with children. She boarded in town during the week, but came home every weekend, and the house always felt more complete when she was there. James and Katie, the children of Lucian and Liv's union, grew up knowing nothing but love and security. James wanted to be a veterinarian and left for school in Topeka when he was 18, writing long letters home about his studies. Katie showed talent as an artist and spent hours sketching the prairie and the people she loved. Through it all, Lucian and Liv remained the steady center of the family. They grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces gaining lines, but their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year. In the spring of 1892, on their 14th wedding anniversary, Lucian took Liv back to the church in Salina where they had been married. They stood in the same spot where they had exchanged vows, and Lucian pulled out a small velvet box. "I never properly proposed to you," he said. "I mean, I did, but it was rushed and I did not have a speech prepared. I want to do it right this time. Luke, we have been married for 14 years. You do not need to propose again." "I want to." He opened the box to reveal a new ring, more elaborate than the simple gold band he had given her all those years ago. "Olivia Bennett, you are the love of my life. You took a broken man and a struggling family and made us whole again. You gave me hope when I had none, love when I thought I could never love again, and a future I never imagined possible. Every day with you is a gift, and I want to spend every day I have left making sure you know how much you mean to me. I cannot give you a new proposal, but I can give you a new promise. I will love you with everything I am for all the days of my life. Will you let me?" Liv was crying now, happy tears that streamed down her face. "Yes, always yes." He slipped the new ring onto her finger, next to the old one, and kissed her there in the church with the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. It felt like a renewal, a recommitment to the vows they had made so long ago. As they left the church and drove back toward the ranch, Liv held her hand up to admire the way the new ring caught the light. You did not have to do this, she said. The old ring was perfectly fine. I wanted to. You deserve something beautiful, and I am finally in a position to give it to you. You have given me so much more than a ring, Luke. You have given me a life I never thought I would have. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, and then Lucian said, Do you ever regret it, staying with me, taking on 5 children who were not yours? Not for a single second. Those children are mine in every way that matters, and you are the best thing that ever happened to me. She reached over and took his hand. I found everything I was looking for that day I walked up your road, even though I did not know what I was looking for at the time. I found home. So did I, Lucian said softly. So did I. They spent that evening on their porch, as they had so many evenings before, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. Their children were scattered now, living their own lives, but they would all be home for Sunday dinner, as they always were. The ranch was thriving under Matthew's capable management. The future was secure. You know what the best part is? Liv asked as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. What is that? We have so much life left to live, so many more sunsets to watch, so many more memories to make. This is not the end of our story. It is just the middle. Then I look forward to writing the rest of it with you, Lucian said, pulling her close. They sat together as the night deepened, 2 people who had found each other when they needed it most and had built something beautiful from their mutual need. They had weathered storms and celebrated joys, raised children, and built a legacy. And through it all, they had loved each other with a devotion that never wavered. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the sounds of home, cattle lowing in the distance, horses moving in the corral, the creak of the windmill turning. Inside the house, lamps glowed warm and welcoming. This was their kingdom, the one they had built together from dust and desperation and hope. And as Lucian and Liv sat there under the vast Kansas sky, surrounded by everything they had created, they knew with absolute certainty that they had found what everyone searches for: a love that lasts, a home that shelters, and a life that matters. Years continued to pass in their gentle rhythm. Grandchildren came in abundance, filling the ranch house with laughter on holidays and Sundays. Lucian and Liv became the beloved patriarch and matriarch of a growing family, their story of how they met becoming legend among the younger generations. Tell us again, Grandma, little William would say, Sarah's son, now joined by a dozen other grandchildren. Tell us how you and Grandpa met. And Liv would smile and begin the story, always the same, but always magical to young ears. I walked up a dusty road with nothing but a bag and a prayer, and your grandpa stood on that porch right there, looking like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. And I saw her coming, Lucian would interject from his chair, and I knew right then that God had sent me an angel. Oh, hush, I was no angel. I was desperate. You were perfect. The grandchildren would giggle at the way their grandparents still flirted after all these years, the way Lucian would reach for Liv's hand without thinking, the way Liv would touch Lucian's shoulder as she passed, small gestures of affection so natural they were like breathing. In 1895, on a warm June evening, the entire family gathered for Lucian and Liv's 17th wedding anniversary. All 7 children were there with their spouses and children. The house overflowed with people, 3 generations of Bennetts, all of them connected by the love of 2 people who had taken a chance on each other, one desperate September day. They ate dinner outside at long tables set up in the yard, the food plentiful and the conversation loud and happy. After the meal, Matthew stood up to give a toast. To my father and my mother, he said, raising his glass. Lucian noticed he said mother, not stepmother, and his throat tightened with emotion. You taught us what love looks like. Not the easy love of good times, but the hard love of sticking together when things are difficult. You showed us that family is not just about blood, but about choice and commitment and showing up every day. You built something here that will last for generations. Thank you for everything you have given us. Everyone raised their glasses and cheered, and Liv wiped tears from her eyes. Lucian stood and pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. I could not have done any of it without her, he said to the assembled family. She saved us, every single one of us. Never forget that. As the evening wore on and the grandchildren played in the fading light, Lucian and Liv found themselves alone on their porch once more. It was their place, their sanctuary, where they had shared so many moments over the years. 17 years, Liv said, leaning against Lucian's chest. 17 years since you hired me right there on the spot, without even asking my qualifications. Best hiring decision I ever made, Lucian chuckled. Though, if I am being honest, I probably would have hired anyone who showed up that day. I was that desperate. But I'm glad it was me. So am I. So am I. They watched as Sarah corralled her 3 children, as Matthew's wife organized the cleanup, as the twins argued good-naturedly about something. They watched their family, the one they had built together from broken pieces and blind faith. "Do you think we did all right?" Liv asked softly. "Do you think we raised them well?" "Look at them," Lucian said. "Really look. They are good people, every one of them. They work hard, they love their families, they treat people with kindness. We did more than all right, Liv. We did wonderfully. We did it together, always together." As the stars came out and the family began to drift inside for the night, Lucian and Liv remained on the porch. They had developed a habit over the years of being the last ones to bed, reluctant to let go of these quiet moments. "I used to be so afraid," Liv admitted. "After Owen died, I was afraid of everything. Afraid I would starve, afraid I would end up alone, afraid I would never be able to trust anyone again. And then I met you, and slowly all those fears disappeared." "I was afraid too," Lucian confessed. "Afraid I would fail my children, afraid I would lose the ranch, afraid I would never feel whole again after losing Catherine. But you made me whole in a different way. Not replacing what I lost, but giving me something new to hold on to." "Do you think Catherine would approve? Of us, I mean." It was a question Liv had asked before, usually late at night when her old insecurities crept in. And Lucian always gave her the same answer, because it was true. Catherine loved our children more than anything. She would approve of anyone who loved them the way you do. But more than that, she would want me to be happy. She would want our children to grow up in a home full of love. You gave us that, Liv. If Catherine could see us now, I think she would be grateful to you." Liv nodded, satisfied as always by this answer. "I hope so. I like to think we are all part of the same story, her and me and you and the children. Different chapters, but the same story. That is a beautiful way to think about it." They fell into comfortable silence, and Lucian found himself thinking about the day they met. He remembered the desperation he had felt, the overwhelming sense that he was drowning and could not find the surface. He remembered seeing Liv walking up that road and thinking she looked like hope personified. He had not known then how right he was. She had been hope and love and salvation all wrapped up in one exhausted woman with dust in her hair. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For what?" "For taking a chance on a desperate man and his 5 motherless children. You could have kept walking. You could have found easier work, a simpler life. But you stayed and you loved us, and you made us a family again. Thank you for that." Liv turned to look at him, her eyes shining in the starlight. "Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. Thank you for giving me a place to belong. Thank you for showing me that love does not have to hurt, that marriage can be a partnership instead of a prison. Thank you for every day of these 17 years. They kissed slow and sweet, a kiss that held 17 years of love and understanding and partnership. When they pulled apart, Liv rested her forehead against Lucian's. "Forever," she whispered. "I promised you forever, and I meant it." "Forever," Lucian echoed. "For however many days we have left, they are all yours." They sat on that porch until the moon was high in the sky. 2 people who had found each other in desperation and built something beautiful from the ruins of their former lives. They had created not just a family, but a legacy of love that would extend far beyond their own days. Inside the house, their children and grandchildren slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and safe. Outside, the prairie stretched endlessly under the stars, the same prairie that had witnessed the beginning of Lucian and Liv's story, and would stand as testament to their love for generations to come. And on the porch of the Bennett Ranch, 2 people who had saved each other held hands in the darkness and gave thanks for the day. A desperate woman walked up a dusty road, and a desperate man said the words that changed both their lives. "You are hired right now." It was not the end of their story. They would have many more years together, many more sunsets watched from that porch, many more moments of joy and challenges overcome. But in that moment, with their family sleeping peacefully and the stars wheeling overhead, it was enough to know that they had found what mattered most. They had found each other, and in finding each other, they had found home.